In summer 2019, the Six Flags Entertainment Corporation, alongside the Qiddiya Investment Group, announced the first theme park in Saudi Arabia, set to be located just outside of Riyadh in a new city known as Qiddiya. Qiddiya is the first ever city based around play, with 12 planned theme parks, an F1 track, stadium, performing arts center, and more. The first property to open would be Six Flags Qiddiya City, originally planned for 2023, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic would end up opening on New Year's Eve 2025. The park's headlining attraction would be Falcon's Flight, the world's tallest, fastest, and longest roller coaster. The attraction would launch riders up to the top of the Two-Wake Mountains with a 640-foot elevation change. It would drop riders off the side of the cliff into a 535-foot camelback hill, reach speeds of 155 miles per hour, and travel around the outside perimeter of the park 13,944 feet in length. A roller coaster so big, it created an entire new classification of ride known as the Exacoaster. Falcon's Flight is designed by Intamin out of Liechtenstein, with the track manufactured in Slovakia and the trains in Germany. Intamin is famous for creating some of the world's greatest roller coasters, claiming the previous height and speed records with King de Ka at 456 feet and Formula Rossa at 149 miles per hour. The previous length record was held by Steel Dragon 2000 in Japan at 8,133 feet long. No one roller coaster has held all three records since Screamin' Eagle at Six Flags St. Louis in 1976, 50 years ago. Falcon's Flight didn't just take the records, it soared past them. The ride is 5,810 feet longer than Steel Dragon 2000. That means if you were to tack on an Intimidator 305 or Pantherian to that ride length, Falcon's Flight would still be longer. That's two Fury 325s put together with still room left over for a Wicked Twister. An exact price tag has not been formally released for this attraction, but there is no doubt in my mind that this is the most expensive roller coaster ever built, due to its unreal size, scale, and unique interaction with the terrain. Upon its initial announcement, I, like many people, was skeptical that it would ever get built, and the original animation released certainly did not help. Sounds too good to be true, right? It's because it probably is. I don't think this is ever gonna happen. There's no way. Yep, I absolutely ate those words, because on December 31st, 2025, I stepped foot into Six Flags Qiddiya City on its opening day, climbed aboard the Falcon's Flight train, and experienced the roller coaster for myself. It was the culmination of 6 years of anticipation, following along with its progress, watching in bewilderment and awe of it coming together piece by piece, and even attending the official train unveiling at the IAAPA Expo in 2023. It was absolutely surreal to experience this attraction, and like the calm and collected person that I am, I kept my cool the entire time. This will be my full in-depth review of Falcon's Flight. I'm going to dive into the ride experience, walk through each individual element, tell you what works, what could have been better, and in the end, give the ride a final score out of 10. I spent 4 days at Six Flags Qiddiya City and in total was able to experience Falcon's Flight 9 times. That includes in the front row, back row, outside seat, inside seat, daytime, and nighttime. My first ride was a lot to process, but by the end, I really felt like I got a good feel for the attraction. It all starts with that impressive entrance in the City of Thrills section on the right side of Six Flags Qiddiya City. This park is divided into 6 themed zones with a classic hub and spokes layout, and City of Thrills was designed purely around Falcon's Flight, with even the Falcon's Flight logo being seen at the entrance when you walk in. The park overall is not huge, so it won't take you long to go from the front entrance to the ride. But be aware, with this being the signature attraction at Six Flags Qiddiya, a lot of people will have the same idea in mind, and this ride can get quite a wait right at the beginning of the day. That being said, it might be worth it. With it being such a technologically advanced attraction, there's still some kinks they need to work out to create operational efficiency, so I do recommend getting on it as soon as you can, just in case it goes down later in the day. I'll cover some of the most interesting technical details throughout this video, and that'll likely help create a better understanding of why this ride is so impressive, with new technology integrated that we really haven't seen before. With Falcon's Flight being plastered all over the marketing material for this park, it was important to make a grand first impression, and what an entrance this is. I heard someone describe it as very Hunger Games-esque, and you know, for a ride this big, to that I have to say, may the odds be ever in your favor. The actual name Falcon's Flight was inspired by falconry, which is a Saudi tradition going back thousands of years ago. Falcons were used by people in the desert to help them survive. They would trap and train falcons to use them for hunting. And it seems very appropriate that the fastest coaster on Earth is themed to a falcon, otherwise known as the fastest animal on Earth.
It's called the dive bomb. The attack begins slowly, then gradually picks up speed. The Falcon is approaching 200 miles per hour. It is now the fastest animal on the planet.
The peregrine falcon can max out at 190 miles per hour, so who would win in a race? Falcon's Flight or an actual falcon in flight? Gotta give it to the Falcon. Falcon's Flight has a large stylized cattle pen queue, minimal decor but all vibes. It's the only ride in the park that has lockers integrated right before you board the attraction, so you can wait in the main queue with all your items, put them in a locker part way, go through metal detection, and then pick them up at the end of the ride. Just try not to forget your locker number because you will need it to retrieve your items. Rides like Colossus and Iron Rattler have metal detectors at the entrance and lockers outside the ride. So I'm relieved that the park's headlining attraction received the superior loose article system. During the first weekend that Six Flags Qiddiya was open to the public, it maxed out at over a 2-hour wait. Now that was while it was running on limited capacity. We'll see how it is once the attraction is fully operational, but it really is that one ride that if you're coming to this park, you cannot leave without experiencing it. All of the rides and attractions here are well done, but this might be the most hype I've seen for a roller coaster since I've become an enthusiast. And frankly, I'm not sure we'll ever see another ride quite like this. It takes a park with a huge budget to afford something like this, and with their unique position next to the mountains, I don't know if any other existing park could do something else like this. So trust me when I say, if Falcon's Flight has a 2-hour line, it'll be worth it. Now, it might be in your best interest to invest in a quick pass so that way you can ride it multiple times without waiting as long, but if that's not an option, do what you gotta do to ride this. I saw a recent post where Falcon's Flight had a 240-minute wait, and someone waited 8 hours for it, which is exactly the duration of time that the park is open for. So to that, I say, maybe try to avoid weekends. But what a station it has! Dual load capabilities with a separate load and unload platform on each side. This attraction can operate with 6 trains at a time, each one holding 14 passengers. That's 4 cars per train. Obviously not a ton of people for such a big ride. Pretty much every other Intamin launch coaster can hold more people, typically with 24 passengers at a time. But these are specially designed vehicles to withstand the speed, forces, and heat that'll be generated from this attraction. One of the first things you'll immediately notice with Falcon's Flight is that windshield over each car on the train. This was engineered in a way so that riders would not be required to wear safety goggles during the experience, which is a big difference from Formula Rossa, the attraction that held the previous speed record, only 7 miles per hour slower. Having now experienced both rides, it certainly does make a big difference not having to wear any protection over your eyes. But I was initially really worried that the windshield would detract from the experience and it'd feel more like driving in a car with the top down. Would you still be able to appreciate that speed? Well, I'm pleased to say, yes, you absolutely can. I did not think the windshield was that bad at all. That being said, Falcon's Flight operates with staggered seating. On every car except for the first, the outer seats are positioned further apart, closer to the edge of the track. It's kind of set up in a similar way to the B&M staggered seating like what you see on Thunderstriker or Behemoth. The train is designed this way to be more aerodynamic, so it really pierces the air. It's a decent sized gap between your seat and the person next to you, but the advantage is, from your position, only about half of your body is covered by this windshield, meaning the experience is much more intense. You have a lot more wind in your face. If you can only ride this attraction once, take an outside seat. It's an incredibly impressive train design, each one weighing 10 tons. A beautiful, massive lead car design with eyes that light up, as well as the sides of the vehicles with those LED lights. And with Six Flags Qiddiya City being primarily a nighttime park, it means you can always see the train when it's flying by. You'll notice those huge spoilers going across each set of seats. That's so when the wind rolls off the windshield, it just goes straight over the top of your vehicle. And is comfortable to sit in too. If you've ridden one of Intamin's multi-launch coasters, this lap bar and seat will feel very familiar. The only real difference that you'll notice is that the seats actually sit considerably lower than most LSM coasters. Rides like Pantheon and Tutatis have you positioned where your feet sit firmly on the floor. On Falcon's Flight, you're sitting low. You'll notice when all the attendants are checking your restraint, they'll ask for you to extend your legs. That's because if you were to keep your legs bent in a classic typical seating position, it would prevent your lap bar from coming all the way down, and this way it sits snug at your waist. As you're waiting for the train to dispatch, I also recommend that you take a look behind you or to the side of the train. You'll probably notice this massive cooling system that lines the track underneath the platform. Due to the heat in Saudi Arabia and the intense speeds that Falcon's Flight reaches, this ride has the world's longest roller coaster cooling system. Historically, water is used to help control wheel temperatures, but in this case, each wheel has its own dedicated cooler to prevent it from overheating. The downside is, every train needs to be cooled for around 4 minutes before it can dispatch. That sounds like a lot, but that also includes the unload time. It'll park at the back of the station to let everyone off, slide forward with the restraints still up, parking now at the front, allowing riders to board, and with that dual load, each side alternates dispatches. And in theory, trains should be sending out every 80 seconds. But during the opening of Six Flags Qiddiya City, Falcon's Flight was only operating with 3 trains. That's 2 parked in the station, 1 on the ride course. And it is, as you can see, a very long ride. That meant some very slow dispatches. That did become a little frustrating, but at the end of the day, I was just glad it was open. Typically, when you add additional trains, the higher of chance of something going wrong, the ride throwing a fault. Once the coaster becomes more consistent, I imagine they'll operate with 4 or 5 trains at a time. Regardless though, Falcon's Flight's big con is its throughput. Probably around 600 people per hour. When we went, it was probably half that, like 300 an hour. It's absolutely one of those times when you wish there was a single rider line, so that way you could at least guarantee every seat is filled. But interestingly enough, there are actually no single rider lines at Six Flags Qiddiya City due to cultural sensitivity, so oh well. Last point I'll make before we walk through the ride experience, ladies, or anyone with long hair, plan on bringing a hair tie. This is the one ride in the park that requires you to keep your hair back. If you don't have a hair tie, they'll give you a cover, but I highly recommend you just bring your own hair tie. As you dispatch out of the station, you'll take an S-turn to line up with the track ahead of you. Nice slow build-up as a voiceover tells you, keep your arms down, head back, hold on, that sort of thing. This building to the right is the maintenance storage shed where they keep all the other trains. Nice chill start to help build anticipation before you inevitably lock onto those LSM stators that start pushing you forward, causing you to rise up and begin your ascent up to the top of the hill. This is a very similar beginning to Maverick at Cedar Point, though that attraction is a lot smaller, only around 100 or so feet. We don't have an exact height of this hill on Falcon's Flight, but I would guess it's around 160 feet. Maverick's beginning has more punch to it. It feels like it has a stronger start up the lift. Falcon's Flights feels a bit more controlled, and they've actually broken up this launch into 2 sections, where you start boosting on level track, coast up, and then separate stators on the lift catch you and carry you the rest of the way up. Actually, the first time we rode it, I didn't realize that was the case, and I felt that moment where it lets you go, and I was worried we were about to roll back. Maverick keeps you locked on the whole time. You'll start to crest over, getting your first great view of the mountains out in front of you. If you pause right here, look out in the distance, you'll see all those cranes working on something at the top of the mountain. Supposedly, that's where the new World Cup stadium is going, which is crazy to think about. You'll swiftly bank to the left and plunge down your first drop. In the back, you'll get decent airtime coming down, but it's nowhere near as whippy as, say, Conda at Walby, Belgium. And that's generally a trend that continues throughout this layout. This is not really a whippy experience, even though the start of this ride stays relatively close to the ground. Your first element is a nice speed hill. Regardless of where you sit, you'll get floater airtime here. Relatively mild, nothing too crazy. You'll pass over the bottom of that 530-foot drop towards the wood coaster and then switch directions at the top, banking to the right, now ducking underneath that drop. You'll turn sideways into a left-handed bank, another great floater airtime moment. We then have our first and really only traditional airtime hill on this ride that passes out over a service road. How ironic is it that it's pretty much directly underneath its much larger camelback hill that you can just stare directly up at, knowing that shortly, you'll soon be passing over that. We got a near miss with a support column as you bank to the right and then twist out to the left. This whole section goes out over the employee parking lot, so not the most remarkable of views, but it's about to get a whole lot better. That was just the warm-up. Pretty tame, but still very intimate-like. Though at the end of the day, no one who rides Falcon's Flight is going to be talking about the start of the ride. They might, however, be talking about what comes next. Falcon's Flight then begins the section of the layout that really it's known for, that interaction with the cliff. You'll level out and then promptly begin your ascent up to the peak of the Two Wake Mountains. You are launching up at 100 miles per hour, far away from the rest of the park, letting up into a small hill and then gently coasting up to the peak. It is a crazy sensation launching for that long and that high. You just keep going, and it's crazy how it can feel like you're going so fast, and then suddenly you just slow down at the top, and it feels like the world is coming to a stop. Suddenly, all is quiet. It's just you and nature in this windy serpentine roller coaster track. The first part of which, by the way, takes you out over the edge of the mountain. How messed up it is that the first thing they do is put you on an outer bank over the edge, totally and completely scary. That being said, there's part of me that feels like it could have been even scarier. I would have liked if this outer bank felt a bit more prolonged. I think a lot about the outer bank that you get on those El Loco coasters by S&S, where it just wraps around the turn. You're like hanging sideways. You're like, oh, wow. And this first part here stays level and then just barely takes you out and then immediately turns you the other direction. I wish it was more of a slow, drawn-out outer bank. I feel like that would have really upped the terror. But from here, you bank to the right, stay, again, real low to the ground here. A small little bunny hump and turn to the left. Nothing really super interesting there. It's just to give you time to take your breath, enjoy the scenery, and now your heart is really going to start racing because you just slowly approach the edge of that cliff. And without failure, with every single one of my rides on Falcon's Flight, the train goes dead silent at this moment. Not a scream. You could hear a pin drop as you're greeted with just the most unbelievable view of Six Flags Qiddiya City and the mountains on either side. It's here that you realize you are far away from everything else. And this really is about to happen. 640 feet above ground level. A 90-degree vertical drop directly ahead of you. And just to add to the fear, they've included a holding brake. So especially if you're in the front row, you are dangling over, staring down at that drop. And when all you have is a lap bar, not even a seatbelt, you just feel so completely exposed, like, whoa. And finally, as the train releases, you plunge down to the ground. Again, we don't have an exact height of this particular drop, but I would assume that it's around 200 feet. The rest of this descent is going to happen a bit more gradually, but in the coolest way possible. You then enter the sand-colored tunnel with real tight clearance. This is a big train, and you feel like you're barely going to fit. In the original animation, multicolored lights could be seen lining the entire tube. That was not the case for us, though from my understanding, that still might be a possibility for at some point. I would love to experience this with that in place. And until you exit the tube, you are just coasting, going faster and faster and faster, traveling downhill. You emerge out into the outside world and hit Launch 3, aka the craziest launch that I think I have ever experienced. And I've ridden Top Thrill Dragster, King Dakar, Formula Rosa, and Dodonpa. It is fast, it is sustained, and it is like nothing else on the planet. Probably the element I was most intrigued to find out what it was going to feel like. We've never seen a downward launch before, but here it is on Falcon's Flight. You're already going so fast, probably over 100 miles per hour, and this boosts you to 156, the fastest point on the attraction. At least we assume so. It certainly feels that way. And it is intense. The whole train is like shaking back and forth, not in a rough way, but a powerful way. An unbelievable sensation with an unbelievable sound. I'm not gonna lie, guys, that might be the best sound I've ever heard from a roller coaster. It sounds like it's coming from a freaking aircraft carrier. Unbelievable noise from an unbelievable moment. The most intense part of Falcon's Flight and my favorite part of the experience, hands down. But would you believe there's a way for this launch to get even crazier? In the event of a rollback where the train doesn't clear the 530-foot camelback, the train can be relaunched from a standstill in the valley where it would swing up partway up the hill, launch you backwards up the cliff and most of the way up the drop, and then you free fall back through the tunnel and hit the launch at full speed to clear the camelback. This has got to be the most sought after launch fail on the planet. For a long time, it was a top thrill dragster rollback, but if you can secure a ride on this swing launch, you truly have ultimate bragging rights. That being said, a rollback is technically possible on all 3 launches on Falcon's flight. And the second one is almost as cool. This is in the event that you don't clear the cliff side. You would gradually fall back down and land at the base of launch 2. That would be cool to experience one day. But returning to the traditional ride experience, I believe that this succession of elements right here with the cliff drop, downward launch, and camelback is the craziest 1, 2, 3 on any roller coaster on the planet. Each one of those just happens back to back to back, and it hits you like a truck. That camelback alone is a work of art. 535 feet tall. That's only 20 feet shorter than the Washington Monument. Spitfire, next door, has the world's tallest inversion, and that thing looks tiny compared to Falcon's flight. And I really think the only way you could comprehend the size of this hill is to stand right next to it. Even when you are on the camelback, you don't realize just how high up you are. And you only have a brief moment to take it in. You're going so fast as you rocket up that hill. You're at the peak in no time. There is a set of trims there to slow you down so you don't like fly over the top, which honestly is probably a good thing. I know some people worried that the trims would like actually take away from the experience, but I really didn't mind them. It gives you a second to breathe, literally, and you still get airtime on the ascent, as well as when you drop down. It's floater airtime. If the trims weren't there, it'd probably be ejector airtime. And that drop just keeps going. The fact that they elected to make the new world's tallest roller coaster element a hill instead of like a traditional top hat like what we've seen with Top Thrill Dragster or King Ka was such a refreshing change of pace. I loved the spiral that you would get on those coasters, but they didn't feel like true drops, and this does. You certainly will feel it more towards the back of the train, but regardless, you build all that speed back up, and from here on out, the rest of the layout is just a crazy amount of wind in your face. Absolutely flying past Colossus, you do this like side swipe underneath that first launched hill, a great little moment of like whip, and then just steadily rise up into this hill, then drop down underneath 2 sections of track and the bridge that you'll take to enter Six Flags Qiddiya City. You pass through a tunnel and then thread through all these supports, and it's those near misses that really help emphasize just how fast you're going. One of our buddies pointed out that on Formula Rosa, you're completely out in the open, so you don't have a point of reference of just how fast you're going. But on Falcon's flight, you do. It's also worth noting that it's at this point in the ride that you go right past the future home of that F1 track. Like one day, they're going to be doing races here, and I can't even imagine watching an F1 car fly right past Falcon's flight. Who's going to win? At that point on the track, I genuinely don't know. But you're right up against the ground. You take another side swipe to the left and then bank slowly to the right, and you enter this massive turnaround point. I mean, this is a big turn, guys. You're well over 100 feet in the air, but it just hits you all at once. You would never know. You're actually directly over top of the maintenance area for Sawmill Falls, the mock water coaster. That's what this building is directly below you. You drop back down towards the ground, another little speed hill, a left-handed turn, and then it levels out and you hit a set of trims, turn to the left, and then hit the final brakes. Now you can breathe. Your experience has come to an end. It is a lot to process. This is a difficult roller coaster to marathon. I think at my most, I did 3 rides back to back, still taking a little bit of a break between each cycle. And even that was a lot. I was like, all right, I need to walk around. I need to go do something else. And I was surprised when I saw a lot of comments, people saying that they felt like Falcon's flight looked boring based off of the POVs. And I know it sounds cliche to say, but really, I don't think video does this experience justice. When you're on it, it's freaking nuts. I didn't talk to a single person who rode Falcon's flight who felt like it was boring. It is almost a flawless experience. There's very few things that they could have done to make this ride better. The only things that come to my mind is, one, I think it would have been maybe nice if the first little section of ride was a little bit more compact. Perhaps some of those turns or transitions a bit closer together, then maybe you could have a bit more whip or possibly even ejector airtime. But then the question is, does that make the ride experience too much? I get the vibe that they probably made those elements more stretched out so that you don't overload the rider, because the last third is very intense. If the beginning was intense too, that could be pushing the limits of what most people can handle. So I understand why they did what they did. There's also the part of me that can't help but wonder, what would this ride be like with onboard audio? Like, can you imagine? But really, any complaint I have is just so minuscule. I am so wildly impressed that this ride got built and it exists and is something that you can experience. This truly is a once-in-a-lifetime attraction. To make Falcon's Flight happen, Intamin had to manufacture over 6,600 tons of steel. The ride uses 722 stators. Some of the foundations go down over 100 feet into the ground. The engineering behind the top hat is incredible. You literally have no support columns underneath that peak. It's just that one single track section. They built the track for Falcon's Flight wider than most roller coasters so they wouldn't have to use as many supports, because naturally, supports are expensive, and when you have a ride this big, you can save money by having a wider track gauge. I think that's also where the wider train comes into play. They had to develop completely new wheels for Falcon's Flight. Each one of them is 16 inches in diameter. I actually had the chance to hold one, and they are huge, probably twice as big as most coaster wheels. Ironically though, not as heavy as some others I've held, and they're not bigger than Top Thrill 2's, which I was surprised about. And the more I learn about this ride, the more I'm just impressed with the team that just spent countless hours to make this ride happen. A huge shout out to the project manager who worked on this ride for 6 years, an incredible amount of time to be working on one roller coaster. Years of design and manufacturing and 9 months just to commission it. That's why they just barely got it open in time for the grand opening. Even during the park's VIP opening celebration, Falcon's Flight wasn't open for guests. Opening day truly was the first time that anyone got to experience the ride, and I'm so grateful that I was one of those first people to hop on board. It's probably the most impressive roller coaster I've ever seen. To me, it shows what Intamin is capable of doing when given the budget. 99% of parks would never be able to afford something like this. And I guarantee you that just that arch, the camelback, is more expensive than most roller coasters. And I think it is so freaking cool that a brand new park straight out of the gate said, we want a ride that takes all 3 records and make it good. This ride opened and it is an awesome experience. And you look at it and it feels like a cartoon. It's like someone just doodled a made-up roller coaster and they built it in real life. It's like something you'd see in Roller Coaster Tycoon. I've been laughing at all the comments from our POV video. Someone watched it and was like, ugh, AI slop. And I'm like, no, this is real. Like someone literally looked at this and was like, there's no way that could exist. It must be AI. Falcon's Flight proves what can be done with the right resources, the right tech, and shows you what could previously only be done in video games is now possible in the real world. Someone had to do it first, and I feel like Falcon's Flight just opens up into a whole new world of possibilities for decades to come. And that's why if you watch that first time reaction video I did on Falcon's Flight, I was emotional. And I had nothing to do with this ride. I didn't work on it at all. I can't even imagine what the people who've been dedicating so much time were thinking. But that being said, will we ever see another roller coaster like Falcon's Flight again? I'll never say never, but I really do believe this is a once-in-a-lifetime project. Even Six Flags, the company whose name is attached to this park, would not build something like this at one of their US locations. So that's why I say, if you get the chance and you're able to, I do highly recommend visiting Six Flags Qiddiya City so you can ride Falcon's Flight. For me, living in the US, it was about 17 hours of air travel to get there, but it was worth it and I would happily go back. And that's why, for this ride's final score, of course, I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. And I've had a lot of people ask me, is Falcon's Flight my new #1 roller coaster? And frankly, I don't think I have an answer to that yet, For those that have been following the channel for a while, you might know that I really have a hard time ranking roller coasters, especially like at this point, I've ridden over 1,300. I love so many of these attractions dearly. I'm not even sure I have just a number one roller coaster. I have like 7 or 8 roller coasters that could be my number one. But does Falcon's Flight make that shortlist? Yeah, I think it does. One of the rides that I've always said is one of my favorites is Edgenica, and that's because it is just an absolutely insane experience. And this ride reminds me of that in some ways, which is impressive when my favorite sensation in the world, right, is ejector airtime. So how good does a ride have to be for me to place it that high when it doesn't have ejector airtime? But I'll say this, I met a lot of people at the grand opening of Six Flags Qiddiya, and I heard from several of them that Falcon's Flight was their definitive number one. So if you don't believe me, I'm not the only one who got off Falcon's Flight saying that was an incredible experience and one of the best roller coasters on the planet. So to all the folks at Intamin and Six Flags, give yourselves a pat on the back. You did well and should be proud of yourselves. And if this is your first time watching Coaster Studios, I hope that you'll consider subscribing. I do roller coaster reviews from attractions all across the world. I've reviewed hundreds, and if there's a ride that interests you, I hope that you'll consider checking out the Coaster Reviews playlist. Everything is organized in alphabetical order by the ride's name. That includes reviews of some of the other rides that I mentioned in this video. Please subscribe for more Six Flags Qiddiya content, and I appreciate your guys' support. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.